Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Steve Breach coming to you here. Today is the day, 25 years in the making, 25 years after one of the biggest debacles of WCW. WCW 1997 was on top of the world. December 28th, they ran Starrcade, otherwise known as WCW's WrestleMania. It's supposed to be one of the biggest matches of all time. Hollywood Hulk Hogan against Sting. Should have been looked at as the way people look at WrestleMania 17 between Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Sting had turned his back on, I guess Sting had felt everybody had turned their back on him, thinking he had joined the NWO at Fall Brawl of 1996, a year before. Came in, run ruckshot all over fake Sting in the NWO. Walked out on WCW and hung out in the rafters. He wasn't at every Nitro. He wasn't at every pay-per-view. He dropped down and, beat up the NWO here and there along the way. But they saved this match for their biggest show of the year, December 28th, 1997. And WCW did not deliver. WrestleMania 17, I touched on it a minute ago. It would be ran, I believe, 2001, a couple years later, Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, looked at as one of the biggest matches of all time in WWE/WWF history. If you were to go to Stone Cold Steve Austin, he has major regrets about that match, mainly the ending. That match has a very bad ending with Vince McMahon helping Stone Cold Steve Austin defeat The Rock. Because Stone Cold Steve Austin felt that he was not able to defeat him on his own. He joined up and turned heel, which would lead to the, I believe, the power trip angle of Vince, Triple H, and Stone Cold Steve Austin all coming together before Triple H tears his quad, and they do the invasion angle with Stone Cold Steve Austin joining WCW. Austin was in a weird place. He was one of the most over guys in the company at the time, but the character just wasn't in the right spot. They weren't doing the right things. But here we are, years and years later. People still look at that match as one of the greatest of all times, and the finish is horrible. People remember the Limp Bizkit intro, and those are the things that WCW needed to conquer. You go back, you watch this show, you turn it on, and it opens with Tony Schiavone just basically taking you inside of the arena. There is no $1 million promo about Sting versus the NWO. There's no build-up to, what brought us to here. It's just Schiavone. The one cool thing that I think that they can say they did was they tried to build this up as the biggest match in WCW history by the fact that every wrestler that was not used on the card was still at the show, and they show them in the crowd, basically watching. There was two big matches on the night. Larry Zbyszko versus Eric Bischoff held the fate of Monday Nitro in its hands. If NWO won that match, if Eric Bischoff got his hand raised, it would become NWO Nitro. Basically, NWO would be able to run the show. You could go both ways. There's many people who felt that NWO should have won that match and got their own show. I think that would have been the death of the NWO because of the fact they would not be able to fill the 2 hours at that time, maybe even 3, if I remember right, what time period we're at, that, the only real matches they'd be able to have is jobber matches. You wouldn't want to invite all of WCW onto your show, so you might only have one big main event, and it's heels you're not going to want to lose, so you're not going to be bringing Goldberg or Rey Mysterio. Well, Mysterio wasn't a name. He was one of those guys just watching the show in the crowd. You're not going to bring the biggest names to WCW. You're going to be bringing guys like Kenny Chaos to wrestle in the main event, so it doesn't really make sense to me. So I think in the best thing, although the finish was bad in that match as well, I think it was best that Larry Zbyszko got the win and WCW kept Nitro. Weird thing, you do want to capitalize on the fact that you had just signed one of WWF's biggest stars, Bret the Hitman Hart. He came in, he made his debut. He was a special guest referee of the match between Larry Zbyszko and Eric Bischoff, and he was the deciding factor in that match. Which led us then to going right into Sting versus Hollywood Hogan. We had Michael Buffer come out and do the big dramatic entrance, bringing both guys to the ring. One of the main topics that you hear on a lot of the Conrad shows is the fact that Eric Bischoff and Hollywood Hogan lost faith in Sting because he showed up to the match, the biggest match of his career at that time, and he had not tanned. He was not tan, which they felt like that meant he was not ready for the match. He didn't prepare, and he wasn't ready to become the champion. I don't know. A big match like Starrcade was Sting at Nitro that week. Was Sting there for a run through the day before? Did anybody tell Sting to get a tan maybe Saturday night? I don't know. And if basically Eric Bischoff and Hollywood Hogan come to Sting and ask him if he is prepared, if his head's in the game, does Sting not go get a tan? That whole thing just does not make sense to me. But we're just covering what happens on the show. These guys get in the ring. They do the little dance where they square off. They do their tie-ups. They do a couple bounce off the ring. They're trying to get everybody all fired up. The match is over before it even starts. It's only 13 minutes long. It's the third longest match on the show. Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger get 16 minutes. Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko in the opener get 15. And this match is just longer than Zbyszko versus Bischoff. And DDP and Kurt Hennig, which I guess could kind of be looked at as the workers' match of the night, is at 11. So, it did not get big main event time. You would think Sting would want to show everything that he has. He hasn't wrestled in well over a year since that War Games match at Fall Brawl the year before. We had seen him, rappel to the ring a bunch of times and run, ruckshot kicking and punching and throwing the NWO out of the ring. And, we get to see the Stinger Splash. We get to see, a few of his big moves. But at one point, the fight goes to the outside, and Sting goes for a Stinger Splash. Hogan gets, pulled out of the way, and Sting goes into the railing. They throw it back into the ring. Hogan ties up with Sting, throws him into the ropes, bounces off. He hits the big boot. He drops the leg drop. And Nick Patrick counts a 1, 2, 3. There's no outside interference. There's no Hulk Hogan body slam. I get it. The boot and the leg drop is the finish, but you got to build up to the finish. And as they count the 3, they're already moving the camera and showing the ring announce table. And Bret Hart is there. He had come back down to watch the match. He had been the special guest referee, but he had left. And he came back. And before there was any tomfoolery, he was already at the table. It doesn't make sense when there's no cheating going on for him to come all the way down and be able to grab the guy's hand and not ring the bell. Then beat up Nick Patrick. Then throw him back into the ring. I get it. He was a special guest referee the night before, so in wrestling terms, he was sworn in. He's a WCW referee. He just restarts the match. And at this point, Sting is on 10. And he basically gets the Hulk Hogan, comeback where I believe he body slams Hogan. He hits him up, sets him up and hits him with the Stinger Splash. He turns him over. He puts him in what the hell's his submission move called? It's it's like the reverse sharpshooter. He puts him in the hold, And Brett says that Hogan taps out. They have all the WCW wrestlers run in. It looks like it's supposed to be a big moment. Dun dun dun. To build up Thunder debuting that Thursday. No, it might have been Wednesday. I think it started on Wednesday. Or maybe that week. Nitro, the next night. Supposed to be Sting's big night. Kicking off and just running all over WCW, saying he's the champ and he finally beat the NWO and he's going to put them out of their misery. No. They take the tape and they basically say that they got to throw the match out and they're going to wrestle again. I believe they wrestle on Thunder, if I remember right, on the debut night to kick a big rating to make TBS happy. Then they have another rematch at Starrcade. No, maybe they showed this match on Thunder because they wanted to show you the screwy finish, but they wanted to make sure they could sell the pay-per-view as many times as they could. But I believe it's the next pay-per-view would be like Slamboree. Then they have the next match. But WCW, they have the biggest match of all time right there, and they just don't capitalize on it at all. Super Brawl. It'd actually be 2 months down the road. And in that one, Sting defeats Hogan again. 16 minutes. I think they like to blame the fact that they, say Sting wasn't ready, so they had to have a screwy finish to get ready for him to run with the title after they had built it up so far. I think, honestly, this was the plan the whole way. And it didn't work. And now here, 20 years, now 25 years later, they're just trying to make excuses. I think they knew they had to kick off Thunder, and they had to sell more pay-per-views. So going with a screwy finish, with Nick Patrick saying that, he was never told to do a slow count. Everybody's just making excuses. But this match was supposed to be WCW putting the stake into WWF's heart. And instead, WWF gets a revival because yet once again, people that bought what was supposed to be the biggest show got a screwy show with a screwy finish with probably 7 good matches before 2 horrible ones at the end. I mean, no, it's 6 good matches because I'm sure Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko. You've got the NWO versus the Steiners. Goldberg versus Steve McMichael, Saturn versus Chris Benoit, and Buff Bagwell versus Luger, then DDP versus Hogan. I'm sorry, DDP versus Hennig. You can even throw in for the fact that on this show, we were supposed to get the Giant versus Kevin Nash. The Giant versus Kevin Nash, where Nash didn't even show up. I don't know if this is the show, but I remember the rumor at the time is that Kevin Nash actually in real life had a heart attack. And that's the reason why he wasn't at the show. I heard him make a joke about the fact that maybe that was the show where they said I had a heart attack. Maybe that was WCW's story that they put out there, but like Nash had personal problems and wasn't able to be at the show. But they just blew it off. How is this the biggest show of the year? And one of your supporting matches is just like, nah, never mind. We ain't going to do it. I don't get it. That's the reason why WCW lost the war. I think WCW built it up as this was one of the main battles of the war. But when they lost this night, it was done. That's why they had to give us Hogan versus Goldberg, that last night that they won the war. And it was done for them. I mean, how could you build people's trust back? This match was beyond the point of horrible. Nothing happened. Nothing happened other than a screw job that Bret Hart told us that's the reason why he was there was to make sure a screw job didn't happen. Glad I watched this match because in my mind, Sting and Hogan had a good match. I forgot about all the bullshit that happened, and now I know why WCW lost the war.